Funding for this edition of Remember Them with Steve Adubato and Jacqui Tricarico has been provided by PSEG Foundation, NJM Insurance Group, serving New Jersey's drivers, homeowners, and business owners for more than 100 years. Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. The New Jersey Education Association, New Jersey Sharing Network, the Turrell Fund, a foundation serving children, Community Food Bank of New Jersey, and by United Airlines. Promotional support provided by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, and by bestofnj.com, all New Jersey in one place.
Hi, everyone. Steve Adubato with my colleague Jacqui Tricarico. We are the co-anchors of a show you know. It's called Remember Them. Jacqui, who do we remember today and why?
Well, this whole show is dedicated to jazz legends coming out of the great state of New Jersey. And right now, we're going to hear from Wayne Winborne over at Rutgers University-Newark, who gives us some insight and in-depth look to a jazz legend from Newark, Wayne Shorter. He was known as the Newark Flash, and he really took in the 1950s when jazz was this huge thing in Newark, and so many greats came out of Newark during that time period. He really took his roots and used that in his music and what he created. And no better person than to have Wayne Winborne join us for this really inspirational story.
Yeah, and Wayne Winborne over at Rutgers, as Jacqui said, is with the Institute, the director of the Institute for Jazz Studies. And people say Newark and jazz, Sarah Vaughan, the great Woody Shaw, so many great jazz giants out of Newark. So we look at the great Wayne Shorter talking to our friend and colleague over at Rutgers, as we remember Mr. Shorter by talking to Professor Winborne. We're joined once again by a jazz aficionado, an expert, a scholar. He knows why Wayne Shorter matters more than most. Wayne Winborne is executive director of the Institute of Jazz Studies at Rutgers University-Newark. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. How are you?
Great. Listen, Jacqui Tricarico and I talked a little bit about Wayne Shorter and why he matters, but you understood and understand better than most. Why does Wayne Shorter matter now more than ever?
It's fascinating because we're in interesting times today across the planet, as human beings, as citizens of particular nations, as residents in communities, as folks just trying to make our way through life, raise families. And Wayne Shorter increasingly becomes such a beacon, such a person of clarity and vision that continually shows us another way of being with one another. He also happened to do it through making great music and impacting our senses and playing upon our senses and our sounds and adding visuals to that really in an almost cosmological way point a direction for us as human beings. In big sort of philosophical astral words that we can use, but also in small ways about how we get along with one another, how we change our thinking about whether we're upset about an altercation that happened on the street. He is an incredible figure and continues to be, again, through his music, but also through the words that he would use in talking about his music.
Put in context when you met him. He died in 2023 on March 2nd in Los Angeles. Put in context your face-to-face conversation with Wayne Shorter, please, Wayne.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to visit with him at his home. I think it was 2021. We had honored him with an honorary doctorate here at Rutgers University-Newark. And I got to deliver the physical copy to him at his home in Los Angeles. He was actually visiting, he was staying with his good friend, the renowned architect and designer, Frank Gehry. And Wayne and his wife, Carolina, they were having some work done on their home nearby in Los Angeles. And the Frank Gehry house in Santa Monica is well known. It's on Google Maps and everything. So first thing I get to go meet Wayne Shorter physically, whom I'd encountered, when I was in high school, through his records. And then, of course, the great bassist, singer, and composer Esperanza Spalding, who was very close to him, like a daughter to he and his wife, Carolina. She was there and sort of wandering in and out. And so, they welcomed me in, and I got to spend the next almost 5 hours, almost 4 or 5 hours sitting next to Wayne Shorter and just talking. And honestly, it's one of the great thrills of my life. It really is. His mind worked in a different way. Steve, we throw the word genius around a lot, and there are a lot of folks who are really, really smart and have different kinds of genius, but Wayne Shorter truly, was a genius. His mind just worked.
I'm sorry for interrupting. What made him a genius?
I think, I'm speculating about, we can do psychological testing stuff and, his creative output and blah, blah, blah. I really think in his mind, everything was related to everything else. A movie that he saw in 1952 was just one step away from the sound that he heard of a bird outside of his window, or the vacant lot that he and his brother used to play in behind their parents' house, or this composition he was writing, or a solo that Charlie Parker played on his first record, or the conversation he just had with his good friend, Sonny Rollins. And he literally would bounce from thing to thing. And he spoke in such a way, like I'm using these long, complete sentences. He would sometimes just say these very short phrases and then look at you, and like, oh, huh. And you have to think about it. And I have to tell you, I know some folks inevitably found that strange or difficult. He had in high school, his nickname was Mr. Weird, and sometimes they call him Mr. Gone because he was a very different thinker. But I loved it, man. I mean, sitting next to this guy and really following him. He loved cartoons and movies and music. And so following along as he made one, allusion or another, or taught me one lesson, or told me jokes, or told me stories about musicians that I loved and knew, and I would ask him questions about things. I'm telling you, Steve, I was a kid in the candy store and just fascinated, like, wow, how does this cat move through the world? How does he see people? And I think he did so in a manner that was laced with love and beauty. And he sought to communicate that to the rest of us through his music.
Let me ask you this, and to remind people, Wayne Shorter received 12 Grammy Awards for his recordings.
Yep, 12 Grammy Awards, 23 nominations. I know, including a Lifetime Grammy, Steve. Including, this Jersey kid, a Jersey kid now.
Yes, so that's where I'm going. To what degree do you believe Wayne Shorter's brilliance, his genius, his whatever he had, is connected to being born and raised in Newark?
Oh, I think it's intimately connected, man. I mean, I think that is such an integral part of who he was and what he would become growing up. And by the way, I get to say this because I'm not born and raised in Newark. I live here in down Newark now, but I love.
We've adopted you.
Absolutely. Oh, I want it. So I get to have that eye of a friendly outsider, a knowledgeable outsider. Why? He grew up in this context of a neighborhood, bustling city. Think about Newark, all of these different communities bumping up against one another. Folks, the sounds, the food, the music, the interaction, like you said, some of it with not great consequences, but a lot of it with very profound consequences.
And he was at Arts High, an extraordinary high school, music, Arts High. Why did Arts High matter? I'm sorry for complicating it. Go ahead, Wayne.
No. Arts High matters because it was one of the few places in the country, certainly around here, where young people were formally studying the arts, music, visual arts. And so he's thrown into that because he won a drawing contest, actually. He and his brother used to draw comic books, and they used to have these contests all the time, trace, Superman or something like that. And he got first place. They said you can find the you can actually see his picture in the Star Ledger, having won first place. And so it's like, okay, he needs to go to art school. There's this new Arts High, and that's where he goes. And he encounters other students. How
about Ken Gibson, former mayor of Newark?
plays in his band. He plays clarinet in the band because he moves from visual arts to music because he was cutting class and going to the movies, and he got caught. They move him to a music class, and the teacher was particularly good, and so he's doing his work and all. And they take an exam at the end of the year. He tells the story, and he got the perfect score. He got the best score. And there were other kids who've been studying music since they were 5, 6, 7. You know, his parents bought him a clarinet. He started on clarinet. And so he gets a perfect score. And as they're leaving class, the teacher holds up the exam and says, "Now, students, this is a perfect exam. You all need to take note of this." And he said it was like, you know how it can be for a child, a young person, to get validation like that. It was, I forget how he described it. It was almost like he was floating down the hall. And as he walked on, he was like, this is something I need to pay attention to, music, you know. So arts high is important. His family church, Mount Zion Baptist over on Broadway, that's important. His father working at the Singer sewing machine factory is important. He talks about, because he spent a year there after high school, working for a year before he says, I got to do something else. But see the machines being made, and he describes that whole process and deciding, oh man, I don't want to be like the men making the machine because they stay here, each person doing their own thing. I want to be the machine, the mean machine. How do you put it? The machine gets bigger. You know, they were as they assembled the parts. Again, his mind working differently. That's when he decided to apply to NYU. Think of the context of the other guy. Again, he's playing in a band with a bunch of other kids, older kids. One of them would go on to become mayor of Newark, King Gibson. He's hanging out with other kids who are listening to music, who are creating sounds, who are playing sports. You know, even as I say, he was a very different and creative kid. He spent a lot of time indoors drawing. He said other kids would be playing sports, and he'd listen to music or draw. You know, so he's a different kid, but he's in this context, and it's not a random context, Steve. It's Newark, New Jersey.
Then he's side by side with Miles Davis.
Oh yeah.
And the greats.
Yeah.
And he's toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder. What's he bring to that?
He brings his ear, he brings his deep humanity, because again now, so his idols, he's listening to Lester Young and Charlie Parker, and everybody's playing bebop. It's very fast, it's very frenetic, it's very urban. And Wayne is this quiet, introverted person who loves sound. You know, his nickname was the Newark Flash because he could play fast. He played bebop very well. By the time he's ready to join Miles Davis's band, right, he's absorbed all the influences before then, playing with Art Blakey, played a bit with Horace Silver. He's interested in going deeper inside, right? The technique, the harmonic sophistication, the rhythmic flexibility, those were just the tools that allowed him to express his deepest and best self. So now he's going inward. He had been writing the whole time in everyone's band that he played in. He was always composing. And now he's playing with Miles Davis. This was the most popular jazz band on the planet. You know, Miles Davis was a star. And Miles is putting together a new band. You probably know this already, but when John Coltrane left the band, it was almost 4 years that Miles spent testing, playing with other great musicians. He never settled on another saxophone player. He tried several of them. He tried a vibraphonist. And then Wayne Shorter comes along, and he knew he had found his bandmate. And eventually Wayne would become the primary composer for the band. And he tells a famous story of showing up with his book of compositions and Miles just grabbing one. They were at a record date, and Miles just grabs one and they play it. And it's now what's considered a jazz standard called Footprints. And when they finished the date, Wayne Shorter said that Miles told him, okay, we'll see you next week, and bring your book, meaning his compositions. It's just beautiful talking about this Newark, New Jersey, incredible person, won a Polar Prize, international figure, still influential and impactful, and took Newark, New Jersey with him throughout his life. See, had it with him.
Hey, Wayne, thank you, my friend. Continue to join us on Remember Them, putting in perspective some of the greatest, most impactful and important jazz icons, artists, geniuses who we must remember. Thank you, Wayne. All the best.
Thank you, Steve. Always great to see you. Take care.
You guys stay with us. We'll be right back.
To watch more Remember Them with Steve Adubato and Jacqui Tricarico, find us online and follow us on social media.
Well, do you have it?
I do, but I don't think you're going to like it.
NJM's proud to put policyholders first. What does it even mean?
Evidently, their top priority is doing what's right for their customers.
Oh, I can't compete with that.
No jingles or mascots,
Really?
just great insurance. NJM.
Jackie, let's shift gears. We just talked about Wayne Shorter, and now we look at the great Bucky Pizzarelli. Who was Bucky, and why are we talking to his son, John?
And, you know, we've had Bucky and John join us before together, which you're going to see a clip from that up next, when you interviewed them together at NJ PAC many years ago. And they are just two jazz greats. The music runs through their family, and John himself is a musician as well. And Steve, it really is such a treat when we get to interview people who were family members of the folks that we're remembering, because we get those really in-depth stories and stories that people have never heard from those folks. So you'll hear some of that up next with your interview with John.
Look, Bucky Pizzarelli, you may not know exactly who he was, but he was with the Tonight Show band way back when Johnny Carson moved to California. Bucky did not go with the band. He wanted to stay with his family. He was a Jersey guy, family guy. And John Pizzarelli, as Jackie said, a great musician, a great jazz guitarist, talking about his dad, the great Bucky Pizzarelli.
And a 2011 New Jersey Hall of Fame inductee. Didn't want to forget that one.
I love how Jackie corrects me on the air, but it also makes the show better. She's right about that and about everything else. Check it out. Performing together as father and son, what's it like for you to be together?
Biggest thrill of my life.
Talk about it, Bucky.
Well, you know, we know each other, and I know where he's going, and he knows where I'm going. So we meet, and the music comes out.
Go ahead.
Well, I agree. You can't say it any better than that. And you said once, you can't beat blood, and blood
That says sometimes doesn't always, you know.
But you know, the musical
You heard of the
blood,
Jacksons, right?
the musical blood in our family was so. His uncles played banjos, taught him. Same guys who taught me when I was very young. So music was always for fun, and so we don't really know that we're doing it for a living.
Sunday, every Sunday at our house, with my two uncles, and then we were watching, and then I learned a few chords, and I showed him, and then we all joined in.
We are honored to be joined by an extraordinary musician, guitarist, and he's just the best. He's John Pizzarelli, and Bucky was his dad. Hey, John, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Hey, listen, there was some video we showed of you and your dad. I was honored to be able to interview you at NJ PAC, and the two of you I don't even know if you had it planned, but you could always just get together and do what you did, create that magic. Why was it so special to play with him?
Well, every night with my dad on the bandstand was the learning experience. And actually, the car rides were just as much a learning experience, too. We talked about so much in the car, and we just had a lot of fun. By the time I got to be a better guitar player, it was a lot more of a musical conversation, and then we just had so much fun playing together.
So he learned, going all the way back, he learned from his uncle, Peter Dominic and Bobby Dominic, two uncles, right? So
That's
how
right.
much of he, John, was and is a family thing for the Pizzarellis with music?
Well, the great part is I learned from the same two guys. So when I was 6 years old, I studied with Bobby Dominic, my father's uncle, and then by like 1971, 72, I studied with Peter Dominic. So, and if you wanted to be part of the family on Sunday at Peter's house, when they always had a big dinner and lots of fun, you had to learn their language, and their language was honeysuckle rose. So that's why I like being in the group and playing the banjo, and then later on the guitar with them. Felt like you were part of the group.
Let me try this. Bucky was a student of guitar for his entire life. Was he constantly learning as a student of the guitar?
Yeah, if ever if he made some kind of mistake, or there was a song that hung him up the night before, the next day he would sit down and go over that song. And if I called him from my apartment or if I stopped by the house, he'd have that music in front of him, and he was constantly trying to play better chords on a song, learn a song better, and just be as good as he could be on the instrument. Taught himself classical guitar, played the bossa nova on a lot of records, and even electric guitar, the rhythm guitar. All the aspects of the guitar were challenging to him.
So, it's so interesting to me. Back in 1952, we talked about this when we introed this segment. Staff musician at NBC, playing on the Skitch Henderson. Back in 1964, a member of the Tonight Show band. So Johnny Carson and Tonight Show moved to LA. He's here, and he doesn't go to LA, to California with Johnny Carson, with the Tonight Show Orchestra, to be with his family. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, he stayed in New Jersey because he was really established in the studios. He didn't wanna move everybody to California, and I think, he's a real Jersey guy through and through, before that was an expression, he loved being in New Jersey, being near his mother and father and the family, and I think he had enough of a career here, it didn't mean a lot to him to go be in a band out on the West Coast.
Bucky Pizzarelli and Frank Sinatra. Talk about it.
Well, there were always when we were kids and the phone call came that there was a record date, we were all sort of, "Lucky's got things to do, everybody out of the way," there's a record date, those record dates were always late at night, 10 o'clock, and so that was always a big deal, and then he'd always say, he came over to me, gave me a big hug. He'd always have something, fun to say about the date, and when I got to do the Garden State Arts Center and open for, Sinatra in '93, I called my father and I said, we gotta do the date with us, it'd be fun to have you." And he played
Did
with
he?
Yeah, he did the date with us, and at the end, Sinatra came out off stage where we were, and, he shook my father's hand, he said, "Thank you for helping us out tonight." My father was just laughing, because that's all he ever did, he was always, that was a big answer for him, just those.
Not a talker, John?
Not a big talkers. That's why, when I got him in a car to go to gigs, whether it was an hour, 2 hours, or we drove up to Boston or something, I would make cassettes and force him to talk. I had a captured audience, so I'd say, "What was it like with Sinatra? What was it like when you played guitar at this club or when you worked with that guy?" And that was really fun. And then eventually he knew what the drill was. He would say, "You got any good music for the ride?" And I'd find records that he was on that he hadn't heard in a long time, and it was really fun.
John, do this for us. You talked about the collaboration with your dad, with Bucky and Sinatra. Share with us another collaboration that really sticks in your mind of the many, many, many collaborations with the two of you.
Oh,
You performed for presidents, didn't you?
my father did. My father performed for Reagan with Sinatra and Perry Como, and then also I have a recording of it. There was when King Hussein came in during the Reagan administration. He wanted to hear Buddy Rich on drums with Benny Goodman, and so Benny called my father and said he wants Buddy Rich. My father said, "Call him." So he called him up, and there's a great concert they played was Hank Jones, Milt Hinton, Benny Goodman, Bucky Pizzarelli, and Buddy Rich. And they did a beautiful concert for King Hussein. I got a recording of that, and it's one of my treasures. And I think my father and Benny Goodman got along pretty well from about 65 to 85. And there was a saxophonist named Zoot Sims. We got to play at Waterloo Village with him and at the Ridgewood Bandshell and places like that. And they were good friends, and we'd always have fun at the house and things like that. And
Did
Bucky was.
Bucky get along with just about everyone, John?
I was just gonna say that, he got along with everybody because he was smart, he let the other people dictate what they wanted to do, and he was like, "That's good," and he knew when to make suggestions, and he knew when to lay back and let what they wanted to do work. So I think that's why he got along with so many people, and everybody I meet to this day and I've met along the way have always said, "Oh, this so and so loved your father. This guy loved your father. This singer loved your father. He was so easy to work with." He was a great listener.
And he played into his 90s.
Yeah. This is pretty remarkable. I mean, with the exception of, I think, 90, 91, he did come back after like a stroke that he had, and even played. He played with me at Birdland. Came on, and he would just look at me like, "What do you want to do?" And as long as his eyesight was going, but as long as he knew where he was on the guitar, he could find his way, and he knew where the melodies were. Once he knew where it was in the right key, he was off to the races. You know, it all sort of came back to him, and it was quite amazing.
He passed during COVID, and then your mom passed soon thereafter, if I'm not mistaken.
7 days later.
What do you miss most about your dad?
I miss the fun. We had a lot of fun together. It's the funniest thing when I get asked that question now that moves me, the fun that we had. And I miss that.
I don't know if you remember, you've done so many interviews. I remember being at NJ Pack with you and your dad, and you just started playing together, and I just thought, what an extraordinary thing, not just for these two great guitarists, musicians, but a father and a son sharing their love of music, enjoying each other, and as you just said, having fun. Hey, John, thank you for allowing us to pay tribute to and remember your dad, the great Bucky Pizzarelli. Thank you so much, John.
My pleasure. It's always a joy to talk about my dad.
Yeah, well, it's a joy to have you. That's the great John Pizzarelli talking about Bucky. I'm Steve Adubato for our entire team at Remember That. I want to thank you so much for watching. Let's remember and listen, check out the great Bucky Pizzarelli. See you next time.
Remember Them with Steve Adubato and Jacqui Tricarico is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by PSEG Foundation, NJM Insurance Group, Hackensack Meridian Health, the New Jersey Education Association, New Jersey Sharing Network, the Turrell Fund, a foundation serving children, Community Food Bank of New Jersey, and by United Airlines. Promotional support provided by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association and by bestofnj.com.
You can't hide what makes NJM Insurance so great. Although some may try. We're proud to put policyholders first. No jingles or mascots, just great insurance. NJM.
If you register as an organ donor, you have the potential of saving up to 8 lives.
And my neighbor passed away. His eyes were actually donated, and that person now can see.
Not only can you save a life, but if something should happen to me and I'm no longer here, I know that in some small part, I'll live on in someone else.
Say yes, save lives. Say yes, save lives.
Say yes, save lives. Be an organ and tissue donor.
A cancer diagnosis changes everything. So does where you go for treatment.
Where other cancer centers offer radiation, at Hackensack Meridian John Theurer Cancer Center, we're utilizing the world's most advanced precision radiotherapy
that can pinpoint and destroy your cancer.
Some perform clinical trials, but we have one of the nation's most rapidly growing drug discovery programs.
Providing hope with the medicine of tomorrow.
New Jersey's best cancer center. Know the difference.